The biggest scandal that could ever rock the world of the Mandela effect finally arrives. Will those who don't believe in the phenomenon finally admit there's something wrong with eggs? We're in a different egg universe than we used to be in. And then we travel back in time to June 21st, 1904. According to the New York Times, this is one of the wackiest, wildest days in American history. You didn't know that, but you will. And yes, this is an interactive adventure. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Hope you guys had lots of fun. We got a ton of stuff to cover, so first off, jogging into Dead Rabbit Command, everyone give it up for our newest Patreon supporter. Get on your feet and raise those hands for Art Jimenez. Woohoo, yeah, wee! Doing cartwheels, now he's kind of just showing off. Art, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the Patreon, I totally understand. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. That helps the show grow. Join the Fluffle today. Join the Fluffle and help support Dead Rabbit Radio any way that you can. Art, I'm going to go ahead and start off by tossing you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. We're going to leave behind Dead Rabbit Command, put on your driving goggles and little leather hat, and take us all the way out to a kitchen. We could have just walked over there, but take us to a fancy kitchen. A scientific kitchen. Art, go, drive. Art eventually drives us out to this nondescript white building. It looks like a scientific laboratory, right? So we all walk in, and there's like a bunch of people walking around with carrying beakers and stuff like that. They're all tripping. They're all, we've created 10 diseases, And we run away from them. We walk around, and we see people in lab coats with safety goggles, and they're pouring bases and acids into different beakers, and they're like, oh, something happened. There was some sort of reaction as their face melts off. We're like, man, they're really sloppy at this scientific laboratory. There's like a particle accelerator. We pass the hallway of infinite Anthony Fauci clones. We're not here for any of that stuff. That stuff is lame. That stuff is now so gauche because I have uncovered the newest scientific conspiracy. And it involves eggs. My most fierce enemy. I didn't start eating eggs until maybe 5 years ago. I never ate an egg. People say, didn't you eat them as a baby? I go, I don't know, I was a baby. But ever since I could remember, I never ate an egg. And I didn't eat an egg for about 5 years. I was quite proud of the fact. I never ate an egg, but eventually I was like, I should try these. I don't know why it took 42 years for me to be like, what are these things people are always talking about eating? These eggs? I mean, they just look disgusting, and they come out of a chicken's butt. So I was like, no, I don't want those. And then I think I was on keto, and I was like, they're cheap. So I started making eggs, and I burn them. People can't eat the eggs that I make. I throw them in a frying pan until they're hard. Like, I just cook them until they're hard, and then I cover them in ketchup. And there you go. So I don't have the problem that these egg nerds are currently having. We walk into the scientific laboratory. We see all these Bunsen burners and all these scientists. And they have those little wire hooks. You know how when you dye eggs, you have to take that little piece of wire to dip it in the dye? They're using those, and they're holding it over the Bunsen burner. And the supervisor of the scientific laboratory is like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? It smells delicious. Everyone bring in your bacon. Someone start cloning pigs. What are you guys doing? And they're like, sir, we're trying to figure out how to cook the perfect egg because it doesn't work the same way anymore. It's not the same that we remember. And the head scientist was like, what are you guys talking about? So that's when they show them their experiments. Apparently, this is going to blow your mind. If you've ever held an egg over a Bunsen burner, you know how hot that wire would get. It would instantly melt to your hand. It has nothing to do with Bunsen burners. I was just doing a theater of the mind. If you guys have ever hard-boiled an egg, your mind's about to get blown. I've never hard-boiled an egg. I find the concept absolutely disgusting. I can only eat them scrambled. I can only eat them burnt. I can only eat them covered in ketchup, so I forget that underneath that red sauce there's an egg. But if you've ever hard-boiled an egg, how long... This is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow, or maybe you're like, Jason, you know nothing about eggs. Every egg fact in the world would blow your mind. All of them. Because you don't know anything about it. No. How long, I'm going to give you guys a second to think about this. How long does it take for you to hard boil an egg? Okay, now I know some people immediately said 7 minutes or 5 minutes. Some of you guys go, well, it's a super complicated process, because I've asked people this question in real life. They go, well, if you really want to know, first you have to boil the water, and then you put the egg in, and then I was like, I don't care about any of the details. How long does it take you to hard boil an egg? I don't care if you soak it in water afterwards. I don't care about none of that. They're like trying to give me feedback. I ask them a question, and they start talking. I was like, shut up! Give me a minute. Give me one single amount of minutes that it takes to cook. They're like, whoa, I thought we were friends. No one's friends when eggs are involved. How long does it take for you to hard boil an egg? And it doesn't matter if you do the cold bath method. I had to learn all this stuff just to look into this, to look into this stupid conspiracy that's taking the world by storm. You haven't heard of this yet? I hate eggs. Some people boil the egg and then take it out and then just peel it and eat it. They're scalding. The fans are all scalded. They're like, oh, I'm also a masochist. That's why I love eating these eggs. I love the pain. Some people take it out, put it in the ice bath, cold water bath. Some people let the egg boil in the roiling water, like they put it in the pot and then just walk away, and they come back and they're like, yummy. And then other people boil the water first and then drop the eggs in. But we're talking about from the amount of time that the water is boiling to when you take it out. So the people who leave it rolling around the whole time, I guess they probably have a different measurement. But from the amount of time from the water is boiling, when it's hit 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, whatever measurement you're using, from the amount of time the water is boiling, you put in the egg, to the amount of time you take it out of the boiling water. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about how long you have to submerge it in ice or cold bath or whatever, anything like that. How long does it take for you to boil an egg? Did you know? It's going to blow your mind. Did you know that to perfectly make a hard-boiled egg in the boiling water takes 15 minutes? Some people will say 13 to 15. Some people will say 11 to 15. That's the lower threshold. But for the most part, 15 minutes is the sweet spot of how to boil an egg. Now, I know a bunch of you guys all of a sudden went, that's not true. That's not true. It's not 15 minutes. It's 7 minutes. It's 5 minutes. I've been boiling eggs my entire life. It's not 15 minutes. Well, I want you to do a test right now. I want you to hard boil. You're all driving to work. You're like, dude, I got stuff to do, man. I gotta go work in the factory. No. Call in sick. I want you to hard boil an egg right now using the method you've always used. And according to recent reports online, it'll take bare minimum 11 minutes, most likely 15 minutes, to get the hard boiled egg you've been boiling all your life for 7 minutes or 5 minutes. Now, I don't know anything about eggs. I'm not going to hard boil an egg for science, because then I'm just going to have a bunch of eggs laying around. Hard boiled eggs are the grossest of all eggs. Scrambled is the only way to eat them, and burned. So if you go and look up perfect time to hard boil an egg, you'll see lots of information online saying 15 minutes. 13 minutes to 15 minutes. Kind of that is the sweet spot. People are like, no, that's not true. I've been hard boiling eggs my entire life. It's 7 minutes. It's 5 minutes. People are like, and so what's interesting is you could argue that they're just misremembering how long they would boil and how they have an egg every day and they're like, oh, what did I do yesterday? You could argue that they're forgetting the time, but what people are posting online is they're saying recently, like in the past couple years, people have been boiling their eggs the amount of time they always have, and as they were getting more runny than they used to be. So if they always boiled them for 7 minutes and they always had the perfect hard-boiled egg, 2 years ago, they cooked it for 7 minutes and the egg was more yolky. What? I must have made a mistake. I must not have really cooked it for 7 minutes. And put it in a little bit longer, it gets to where they want it to be. Some people have reported giving up eating eggs. They're like, I didn't know what was going on. Like, it was starting to bug me. I had been cooking eggs the exact same way my entire life, and in the past couple of years, it hasn't worked. One person has I'll obviously have the links in the show notes. You can read this debate as well, but one person said, I boiled the eggs 7-8 minutes, tops. That's how I boil the egg. Did it for 20 years, perfectly hard-boiled eggs each time. Last week, did it, exact same procedure, cracked the egg open, it was runny. But if you do the same thing every day, or let's say you even do it once a week for 20 years, you do it the exact same way for 20 years, the very least once a week, and maybe more, right? People may be making eggs 5-7 times a week, and then it stops working. That's weird. That's really, really weird. Now, there's a couple of theories about this. So what could have actually happened? First off, we'll get to the more... Well, it's interesting. So one of them, people are like, well, based on your geographical location, if you're like in a higher elevation, eggs take longer because the water boils different. And people said, I'm in my house. I've been in my house. I've been in the same neighborhood for the past 20 years. Unless there was some sort of massive earthquake, unless I woke up on the top of a mountain and the rest of the city was sunken in, where I'm on the same level. I'm on the same sea level. Other people said, well, water, it boils differently now. It was interesting. A lot of people were pushing back against this. The egg industry was like, no. They found out about our interdimensional eggs. Some people said, modern day stoves take longer to get hot than, say, an old wood-burning stove. And the pushback to that was, well, water boils at the same temperature. Doesn't matter how long it takes to get to the boil, 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't matter if you're using an old-fashioned stove or a space-age stove, the water still boils at the same point. So once it's boiling, it's the same temperature. It shouldn't matter. Some people have said it's the size, that eggs may have gotten bigger over time. And I think this might be a little bit closer to truth. Eggs might have gotten bigger over time, so they take longer. But this seems to be pretty consistent. And you can buy the big eggs versus the small eggs. And what's funny is that you might think this is a minor conspiracy theory. You might think it's not a conspiracy theory at all. They're like, Jason, you know nothing about eggs. You know more about Bigfoot, and at least you've encountered eggs in your life. You've held them, you've eaten them, you've hunted them as the Easter Bunny laid them. There may not be a conspiracy theory at all, but what I find interesting about this is that if you type in how to hard-boil an egg, or how long to cook the perfect hard-boiled egg, you'll see a ton of different opinions on it, but they're all in like the 11 to 15 minute range. So they're all much higher than what people are remembering. Not all of them are going to be exactly 15 minutes, but you'll see a ton of them. And is this an issue where it is a Mandela effect type situation where people are from the egg verse, the easy egg verse, where it took much less time to cook an egg? See, I always heard the term 3-minute egg when I was a kid. I had no idea what anyone was talking about because I didn't eat them. But people would often talk about a 3-minute egg. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a hard-boiled egg or a poached egg or how long it takes an egg to pop out of a chicken. I don't know. But I've heard that term before. And that's really all. From that term to this, that's really all I know about eggs. I crack them, I throw them in a frying pan. That's when I eat them. I eat them super rarely. But what I find interesting about this is there an easy egg verse where it used to be 7 minutes boiling, and then you'd have the perfect hard-boiled egg? Because that's a hard thing to misremember because it is something you're doing every day. It would be the equivalent of someone who watched football their entire life, and all of a sudden someone kicks a field goal and they go 2 points, and everyone's like, yay. Wait, actually, how many points do you get for a field goal in football? Isn't it 1? Or is that the ball kick after the touch? It doesn't matter. That's a bad example. Let's say that you're watching a basketball game and all of a sudden LeBron James shoots from half court and it goes into the hoop, and the ref or the sports announcer guy goes, "That's it, everybody. He hit the downer. 5 points for the Lakers." And you're like, wait, what? That's a thing? Huh? And everyone around you's like, downer, yeah. And the bar is like giving free drinks. He's like, you know the rules? Free drinks on downers. You're like, what is going on? The rule had changed, and you had never heard of a downer in your life. I guess that's a bit more of an extreme example. That's the rest of society all of a sudden have some new tradition. The president's like, everyone's president on downer day, and then everyone gets to make their own rules. It's not that extreme, but it's something that you would know super well. There's a 3-pointer, and how many, never mind. Stop talking about basketball points. I don't know those either. There's like the 3, you get 1 shot, you get like 1 point for getting in the hoop, and 3 points if you're standing like somewhere else. You're in the concession stand. You're like, I need this popcorn. Woo! And then I think there's like a free throw thing. But there's no downers. There's no 5-point shots. My point being is that this is something people would know about intimately. And yet it's changed. So what does that mean? It could be that these people are traveling over from, and you may be one of them. You may be like, you may have paused the podcast to Google, how long does it take to hard-boil an egg? You're eating hard-boiled eggs right now, and you're like, oh, this is blowing my mind. Or maybe it's not. Maybe this is much ado about nothing. Maybe you're from the original 15-minute egg verse. So it could be that there is some weird Mandela effect type of thing happening here. It also could be, and this would be interesting as well, that there's something wrong with the eggs. This is the most likely one, right? That there's something wrong with the eggs that are being sold. Like the chickens are different and their eggs are different. And to cover that up, we just it's always been 15 minutes, guys. It's always been 15 minutes. It's super easy to manipulate Google information and news articles and all. You'd be shocked how easy it is to scrub stuff from the internet and change things. It's so intensely easy that it does happen all the time. We just usually don't know about it. And this could be one of those things. Like, yeah, we're just going to flood the internet with these things saying it takes 15 minutes to cook an egg. Newer chefs, right? Chefs who are younger, they would only know the longer term egg. But there's something wrong with the eggs. The older generations would be like, well, that's weird. Like, I know it used to be 7 minutes. There could be something wrong with the eggs. There could be something different about them, some sort of different chemical composition because the chickens are all hooked up on steroids and things like that. Maybe. Allegedly, I just all of a sudden imagine a bunch of lawyers from the poultry industry kicking down my door. Allegedly, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's something different about the egg. Not bad. Not bad, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Chicken Lawyer. No, I'm not saying it's a bad change. All eggs are disgusting. But maybe there's something different chemically in the egg that makes it take longer to cook. Which would be interesting because you'd have to ask yourself, what's more disturbing? That there's 2 universes, at least 2. There's the easy egg verse and the 15-minute egg verse. And something caused the realities to combine. The infinite chaos of the multiverse is constantly churning forward. What's more disturbing, that? Or there's something wrong. There's something wrong with eggs, or something different with eggs. They actually have a different composition than they had just 50 years ago. What's kind of a more disturbing thought? You're on the bathroom making yourself throw over. You're like, oh, why did I join that egg eating contest yesterday? Blah! You're trying to purge yourself from the chemicals. It's too late. You're now part chicken, my friend. Art Jimenez, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the Carpenter Copter. We're leaving behind this egg scientific laboratory. Wave goodbye to them as we fly all the way out to New York City. There's a lot of thinking on this episode. You had to think about how long it took for you to cook a hard-boiled egg. Now I want you to think of a number between 1 and 3. It's not a lot to ask. You're like, I choose 4. You don't have to choose a number. That's fair. But choose a number between 1 and 3. And that will decide how you spent June 21st, 1904. I was recently doing some research on this owl man that was beating up cops in 1904. I couldn't really find much information. You think it would have been the headline, right? You think it would have been the headline of the New York Times? I found this article on phantomandmonsters.com. I found another article about it on thinkaboutitdocs.com. They both referenced that this story was covered in the New York Times, issue June 22nd, 1904. So I went and I actually had to subscribe to the New York Times so I could go through their Wayback Machine and look at it's fine. I've been subscribed to New York Times in the past. I subscribe when it's cheap, when it's like $6 a month, and then they charge me $25 and I just cancel. I'm like, that's a little too much. And I was looking, I didn't read the whole newspaper, obviously. But I did scroll every headline because it was an interesting story. This 4-legged owl creature. The reason why I'm not covering it right now is because I don't think it's true. If someone says it was published in this issue of this newspaper and it's that specific and I look up the newspaper and it's not in there, like I looked at every headline that was published on that day in New York, I couldn't find it. So it's not that it's not an interesting story, but I don't like to tell stories that I'm pretty sure are fake. So anyways, it came off of someone who was writing in a Usenet thing, and they cited this newspaper, and the article never existed. But anyway, so that's why we're not covering the owl man, the 4-legged owl man. But what I did find is, because I looked through every headline, and I was like, oh my god, this was like the craziest day in American history. Because this is the June 22nd article, and there's a bunch of craziness that happened just the day before. Like some of the craziest headlines we've looked at. So pick a number between 1 and 3, and strap in for quite the wild ride. It's June 21st, 1904. First off, we're headed to Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania. I also got to tell you, these ones are a little intense, right? You're like, oh, choose your own adventure. I will clearly pick number 2. That'll be the lucky one. These are really crazy, like super crazy stories, okay? So, it's June 21st, 1904. We're in Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania. And right now, there is a 83-year-old woman dying. Like, oh man, this is... Like, God, never mind. I don't want to pick a number. There's this 83-year-old woman. She's on her deathbed. Fetch me some water, my niece. Fetch me some water. The niece, who's listed as Mrs. Frank Ziegler. So, Frankie, I guess. Frankie goes and brings her aunt some water. And her aunt's Miss Catherine Miller. At 83, she was the oldest person in Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania. You're like, I thought you were going to say the oldest person in the world. Nah, there's a bunch of people older than her. But in Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania, she was the oldest person in town, and she was she was held in high esteem. Like, everyone in town knew her. Everyone in town respected her. And here is Mrs. Catherine Miller on her deathbed. Thank you, Frankie, for the water. Yummy, yummy, yummy. It listed her cause of death. I don't think you can die from this. Senile debility. So I guess that's probably just old age, right? You're just like, your bones stop working. You're like, I'm just going to lay here. They're like, no, get up. Nah, I'm just going to lay here and stop breathing. She's dying, and her niece, who she'd lived with for a couple of years, is taking care of her. And she, Frankie, come over here. Frankie's like, oh man, what is it now? I just brought you water. Why are you complaining so much? Because you're dying. It's like I'm a slave. Frankie, come here, take a seat next to your Aunt Catherine. Catherine goes, little Frankie, I have a confession to make. Let me talk in a normal voice, otherwise it's going to be too hard to hear. Frankie, I have a confession to make. My brother, my dear brother who I love so much, Jacob Miller, he had cancer. You probably don't remember that because you're just a little baby. But he had cancer, and back in 1865, I was so tired of seeing him suffer from cancer that I poisoned him. I have to get this off my chest. It hurt to watch him hurt, and so I killed him. And Frankie goes, "Oh, that's okay, like I understand. No one wants to see a loved one suffer. Like, that's... Rest easy, Aunt. Rest easy as you head off into heaven. Rest easy that you took the life of your own brother to spare him pain." And then Catherine is just laying there in this bed, her frail body pressed against the mattress, her head slightly propped up by the pillow. She lets out a deep sigh. Frankie. I also poisoned my mother. And after that, a few years later, I poisoned my sister. And then a few years after that, I killed a baby. I killed a baby. I killed my own infant niece. Sure feels good to get all that off my chest before I die. Frankie's like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Yeah, I killed my brother because he had cancer, but then, for non-cancer related reasons, I murdered my mom, my sister, and a baby." And then she died. Like, she died. Like, they said she actually told that story 3 times to Frankie. Because of course you're going to be like, no, it's just the near death. You're just imagining stuff. She's like, no, I'll give you details and dates. I'll tell you the exact measurements of poison that it took. She confessed to murdering 4 people on her deathbed, including a baby. And then she died. It's shocking. It's weird because it's shocking because you have anyone who admitted to that. If a hobo was on your doorstep and he's like, "Come here, son, come here, I'm about to die." First off, don't trust him. He's probably laying on a knife with a big smile on his face. But, assuming he really is dying, he goes, "I killed a bunch of people." What did you expect? I'm a hobo. I'm a hobo with a homemade knife. What did you expect? And you're like, yeah, I kind of expect you look like you'd be one of those serial killer hobos. But if Mr. Moneybags was rolling around on your floor and he goes, it was the dog, he did it. He pressed that hot iron against me and burned my heart. But I killed some people. You actually might think he did it too, because he obviously is a little shady. He's constantly evicting people and building those apartment buildings. But you know what I mean? There are certain people that if they had a deathbed confession that they murdered 4 people, including a baby, you would be like, I kind of figured that. Jason, who do you hang out with? Then if someone admitted that, you'd be like, yeah, I figured that. I always wondered where that baby went. You were that professional babysitter. And all of a sudden you quit. I was always curious about that. You wouldn't expect the most high-level member of the community to admit to murdering 4 members of her family on her deathbed. It just would come as a shock. But that's what happened on June 21st, 1904. So if you picked the number 2, I didn't really think this whole interactive thing through. Because if you picked number 2, what would you be if you picked number 2? I don't want you to be a baby killer. You're like, Jason, that's a little too much. I don't mind getting turned into a pig person in Portugal, but you definitely can't turn me into an elderly woman who poisoned a baby. If you picked If you pick number 2, you're Catherine Miller's best friend, Blanche DeMar. She's 82 years old. She's the second oldest person in Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania. And you read the newspaper and you go, my stars and garters, I can't believe that good old Catherine Miller murdered 4 people, including a baby. What has the world come to? I loved Catherine. Are you sure it was true? Yes, ma'am. She said it 3 times before she died. Oh, my goodness. That sounds terrible. Well, I, as her best friend, and now the oldest member of this community, just can't believe that she got away with it, killing them 3 people and that little baby. Biscuits and gravy, that sure is bad. It's bad that she didn't kill more babies. Because if you pick number 2, you're a serial baby killer. She's all disappointed in her friend. She's like, what? Only 1 baby? You let down Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania. Me, number 2. The professional baby killer. And I'll never be caught. Her laugh echoes across the country. Orphanages and delivery wards tremble in fear. If you pick number 2, you're Blanche DeMar, you lunatic. You should have known better. So disappointing in you guys sometimes. Art Jimenez, let's fire up this carpentercopter and take us out of Fredericksburg, Pennsylvania. Let's fly us out to our next story. Peoria, Illinois. June 21st, 1904. This story is insane. If you thought that last story, you're like, boring. Family annihilation. Tell me when something exciting happens. Just 1, baby. I love picking number 2. I rewound that segment a couple times, Jason. This story's nuts. According to the New York Times, this is a real story. And let's just get it started. If you picked number 3, you're a man named John G. Jones. And one day you're walking through the city of Peoria, Illinois, and then all of a sudden, get out of the way, buddy! Boom! Oh! Slam. That was the sound of you getting hit by a car. Probably the first car in the city, right? You hear a horn honk. You're like, what's that? Is that the trumpets of God? Is Jesus returning? Like, how would you even know what was going on? You didn't even know these things existed. You're walking across the street and you get hit by a car. I think the term they used was like a road accident, so maybe it was a horse. I think I would have preferred to get hit by a 1904 car than a bunch of horses, right? 4 horses pulling along a carriage. But anyways, he got hit by a moving vehicle, and he hasn't been the same since. He fell down and he hit his head, and John G. Jones, or you if you picked number 3, that's what I said, right? Number 3? He said, I apparently have the same affliction he did. His head hurts. Oh, my head. And he was depressed over this as well. Now, this all actually happened a year previous. We're getting up to June 21st, 1904. He gets hit by this car, and then he hits his head on the ground, and he's just not feeling himself. His close friends and associates realize that he's depressed all the time. And he's paralyzed. You think that'd be the first thing you notice? You're like, John, there's something different about you. I notice you're always frowning at work. And also, I didn't want to mention it, but you seem to be paralyzed. You seem to be completely immobile from the waist down. But, let's go back to that. Why are you so sad? It doesn't specifically say how paralyzed he was. He might have just been a little paralyzed. It just uses the word paralyzed. I don't think he was paralyzed from the neck down. Well, I know that's not true for what's coming up, but I don't even think he was paralyzed from the waist down. Maybe he just paralyzed a single foot. I don't know. It just says he was paralyzed and he was despondent. He was super depressed ever since he got hit by that moving vehicle. And hit his head on the ground, too. And they're like, well, I hope things get better for you. Buck up, son. Well, on June 21st, 1904, the craziest day in American history no one knows about, John G. Jones said, enough's enough. I'm tired of being depressed. I'm tired of being a little bit paralyzed. I'm going to end it all. So he grabs his pistol and he puts it to his head. Now, before you shut off the podcast, because you picked number 3, and you don't want to hear about this story has a happy ending. Shockingly enough, this story has a happy ending. He puts the gun to his own head, and he shoots himself in the brain 3 times. He shoots himself 3 times in the head with a gun. I doubt it was like a Desert Eagle. I'm sure it was maybe like a little Derringer pistol. But just so you're clear, first off, it doesn't matter how big the bullet is. Shooting yourself in the brain normally ends badly. And 2, what I'm about to say in no way, shape, or form should be considered medical advice. John G. Jones puts the pistol to his head and pulls the trigger. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Fires 3 bullets into his brain. You're like, Jason, wasn't this supposed to be the happy ending? What's the happy ending? Shockingly, when he shot himself 3 times in the brain, he suddenly stopped being depressed. He stopped being depressed. You're like, wait, what? Because he's dead? No. He survived 3 bullets to the brain. And he went to the hospital for it. Obviously, he's not like, oh, I'm not depressed anymore. And look, I can move my foot. Time to read the newspaper. No, he went to the hospital. He's like, I have 3 bullets in my brain. But shockingly, I'm quite happy about it. And he does a little dance. What happened was, according to the New York Times in 1904, is when he had originally gotten in that motor vehicle accident and fell down and hit his head, he had got blood clots in his brain. And then when he shot himself 3 times, this is a real article. This is a real article that was published. When he shot himself 3 times, it actually blew up the blood clots. Like, the brain all of a sudden was like, relax. The blood can flow freely. Sure, it's flowing out of 3 holes in his head, but he had blood clots, and that was what was causing him to be paralyzed and so depressed. So when he shot himself, I've already said this should not be considered medical advice at all. At all. He shot himself 3 times, and it relieved the pressure in his brain, and he was totally fine. The headline for this article was, quote, cured his insanity by shot. And then it goes on to say, quote, blood clots on brain cleared away when he attempted suicide. And they talked to some guy named Dr. Sutton. He doesn't give his first name. He's just Dr. Sutton. Maybe his first name is Doctor. Dr. Sutton goes, yeah, when we treated him, we realized we probably should have picked up all those horrendous blood clots before he blew his brains out. But, let bygones be bygones. He relieved all the pressure in his brain. The blood clots were released. And he's totally doing fine now. And then they show little John G. Jones tap dancing out of the hospital. So if you pick number 3, you're John G. Jones. You have a new lease on life. You're all tap dancing down the street. You're like, hey, look at me. I'm no longer paralyzed. And I'm happy as happy can be. You're all dancing around. You're dancing across the street. You get hit by a car. So, but if you pick number 3, you're a medical marvel. You're a miracle. You learned, again, this is not medical advice. I want to make sure people know that. I'm just joking. But you learned that the true power of medicine comes not in the needle or the pill, but in the bullet itself. We've long thought that these little tiny pieces of metal that blow people's guts up were bad for our health. But is it possible? Is it possible that if they're aimed at the right places, it can actually heal you? Because what is a bullet if not simply a faster flying syringe? If you shot a syringe at 400 feet per second, it's going to blow you up. But maybe you just need to slowly put these bullets into people. And since you chose number 3, you are now a bullet advocate. You go around, you have like a little old-timey show. You're like, step right up, everybody. You're having gout. Let me shoot you in the kneecaps. You're like, Whoops, sorry, that was too. I'm using my regular gun for fending off brigands. Let me use my medical gun. You shoot him in the other knee. Wow, it feels like my gout has gone away. It's all leaking. Gout fluid squirting out. Step right up, step right up. John G. Jones here. You're doing a little stage show. Medical bullets. Is there a possibility? This is one of those stories. I don't want to go too far off about this, but whenever we read newspaper articles, they're like, dude, did you know that back in 1904, the New York Times ran an article about giants being found in Arizona? Yeah, they're also running articles like this. Like, is this story true? I mean, if it is, this should be what they teach every single day in doctor's school. They're like, okay, guys, I know we've covered this for the past 3 years, but we got to talk about it again. The man who blew blood clots out of his brain. You figure this would be more well-known if it was 100% true. I understand how it could work. I don't think it should ever be tested again at all. But it's weird. But so that's the thing, like, old-timey newspapers definitely had a flair about them. And newspapers then and today, every media network has one mandate. Make money. And they'll do it however they can. They are not public servants at all. But these old articles definitely, whether or not they're 100% accurate, have a flair for the fantastic. Art Jimenez, take us up in the Carpenter Copter one last time. We're headed back to New York. I know this episode's going long. I always apologize for that. These Choose Your Own Adventure episodes tend to take... I'm sorry. What did I call them? Picture Your Fate or Interactive? Whatever. Choose Your Own Adventure, whatever. It's copyrighted, but... You know those things. Choose your interactive demise. If you chose number 1, this is your story. And this story's not just kind of nuts. The way that it's written, I wish articles are written like this today. If you pick number 1, it's June 21st, 1904. You're walking down the streets of Mount Vernon in New York. And all of a sudden, you hear a woman scream out of a building, help me, somebody help me. He's trying to murder me. Screaming louder than that. I just don't want to bug my neighbors. And you look up and you see this woman, her arms are kind of flailing out the window like one of those women in that Rampage video game. You don't see any monsters nearby, but you know the monster's inside. A woman screaming that someone's trying to kill her. So without knowing any additional information, you know nothing about what's going on, you run into this building. It's a multi-story apartment building. I'm going to read, because this writing is just fantastic. I'm going to read you a bit of this article. It says, quote, Samuel Hoffman, this is the very beginning of the article, quote, Samuel Hoffman caused the people living in his vicinity a bad scare. It's a little more than a bad scare. Someone's going, help! I'm about to get murdered. Someone's like, oh, Martha, I'm kind of frightened. Samuel Hoffman caused the people living in his vicinity a bad scare early this morning when, because of some disagreement with his wife over the way breakfast should be prepared, he's like, it doesn't take that long to cook eggs. I know the truth. Because of some it's going to take forever to read through this. Because of some disagreement with his wife over the way breakfast should be prepared, he became exceedingly angry, knocked her down with his fist, and then departed in search of an axe. That's a good way to start an article. I'd like to say whatever you want about how horrendous this man is. That's a cliffhanger. This was actually the first article I saw when I was looking for that four-legged owl story. I saw this pop up. I saw the headline. I was like, what? And I clicked on it, and it only provided the first paragraph. Like, without the New York Times subscription, you only get the first paragraph, and it was that. I was like, okay, I gotta get a subscription now. Gotta find out how the story ends. He departed in search of an axe. So she locks herself in a room. She's screaming for help, and that's when patrolman Ira Belding hears her. He's walking down the street, and he hears her screaming for help. He goes in this building, he has no idea what's going on. And we get to this, quote, on the second landing, this is you in this situation, but patrolman Ira Belding, on the second landing, he met Hoffman, who was besides himself with rage. The sight of the officer's uniform caused Hoffman to become temporarily insane. I think that was handled already. He's already walking around beating his wife up over breakfast and grabbing an axe. I don't think it was just the uniform, but the sight of the officer's uniform caused Hoffman to become temporarily insane. And this is an actual quote from New York Times. I love it. And he attempted to knock Beldine's brains out with the axe. The next sentence began. Where's this going, man? This is intense. The next sentence says, quote, "The policeman's helmet saved him." Now, I want you to think about, I read that and I was like, okay, he might have, at the very, very least, this guy may have a couple blood clots in his brain. Because imagine you're just standing there, you're wearing a helmet. I don't care what type of helmet it is. Construction helmet, police helmet. I mean, I guess like even those ride helmets. And then a man who's temporarily insane, he has the strength of maniacs, swings an axe as hard as he can at your head with the intent of cracking your skull open, and as the New York Times put it, knocking his brains out. But instead it just hits your helmet. Like, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt really, really bad. The helmet did its job. Patrolman Ira's brains are still in his head, but man, he must have been seeing stars, like literally. That would have been a huge hit. And so a fight breaks out, obviously, right? Patrolman Ira's not going to take it laying down. He pulls out his billy club and has to block the next swing of the axe. This temporarily insane Samuel Hoffman, he goes, no brains on that blow, but surely this next blow will clearly cause you to die. He swings again, and Ira has to pull out his billy club and blocks the axe. They're in an apartment complex, standing like a landing in a staircase. They're having this Death Star duel. The axe comes back in. The cop blocks it with his billy club, and then they get tangled up. It doesn't say whether or not it becomes like a fist fight or some sort of grappling thing. But now they're completely tangled up, and the fight continues. All we know is how it ends. Because again, it doesn't say whether or not Patrolman Belding got him in like a headlock or got him in some sort of arm bar or was just beating him down, just beating him in this New York apartment complex stairway. It says that he eventually got the best of Hoffman and, quote, soon had Hoffman begging for mercy. So he probably was just beating him repeatedly with a billy club, all about the body, until finally the temporarily insane man who beat his wife over breakfast has returned to sanity enough to say, "Please stop hurting me, Mr. Policeman. Please stop hurting me." Everyone goes down to jail. Well, the cop, that's because of where he works. And all of this comes down to, he had a toothache. He told the judge, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry that I hit my wife. And I'm sorry that I attacked this police officer. I'm sorry that I went temporarily insane, but you wouldn't understand it. I have the worst toothache in the world. The toothache is so bad that anything could set me off. Anything could set me off. Breakfast, law enforcement. I mean, it's a huge, huge gamut of things. I didn't mean to do it." And the judge goes, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Everyone has bad toothaches. He got charged $25, which I get back in 1904 was a lot of money. Like, she was like, 25. The wife was there because she was like, "Hey, listen, I don't want," unfortunately, this is the unfunny part, the cycle of abusive relationships. She originally pressed charges, and then she went down there, and she's like, "No, he's a good man. He's a good man." And the judge was like, "Tell you what, you pay us $25, you can go home. Samuel Hoffman, you're free to go." Probably should save that money. Go to the dentist, but $25 fine. And the wife goes, "Oh, $25. Oh my God, this is 1904. Who do you think we are? The Vanderbilts?" She had to go to the bank and get into her savings account. Like nowadays, listen, I'm not the richest man in the world by any means. But actually, now that I think about it, there are times just even last month, I'd be like, "I don't have $25. Hey, can you loan me $25? So it's not that bad. But I imagine Patrolman Ira didn't like that. He had an axe duel in a stairwell and got hit in the head with an axe that, had it not been for his trusty police helmet, he would have died, would have bashed his brains out. And he's watching this guy just sitting there, and he's like, ha ha ha, $25, that's nothing for me. As he's gloating, he's like, I, Samuel Hoffman, serial police assaulter, I'll never be stopped. As he's ranting and raving, a cold breeze goes in his mouth. He goes, ow, my tooth. So anyways, that's the story of June 21st, 2022. All of those stories took place the day before this issue was run. It's absolutely insane. I had to leave stories out. There was a story about a bunch of Russian people escaping from an insane asylum and building a fort on the other side of the river and throwing rocks as the hospital staff was like, no, you gotta come back. You gotta come back into the hospital. And they're like, no. It's weird. It was the weirdest day. No four-legged owl man. No four-legged owl man that I could find, but we did get those stories. And now you're an elderly man. I'm not done with you yet, number one. Now you're an elderly... Jason, just let the episode end. Just get to going close to an hour. You're an elderly man, right? This was 1904. You were fresh on the flesh. Actually, if you were 20 years old in 1904, yeah, you would be... How old would you be now? You'd be 140 years old. You're sitting there. You still have your police helmet on. If you chose number one, you're like, what a day. The oldest cop in existence. 140, that is how old I am. Yes, the 140-year-old police officer, Ira Belding, and you're sitting there at your house, and you go, yes, so many cases I've cracked over the years. Cracked like eggs. Yes, that's what I want for breakfast. Eggs. And so you get you're 140 years old, you don't have anyone to take care of you. They're like, hey, dude, don't you have a police pension? Yeah, I do, but I'm saving it for a rainy day. They're like, fix that hole in your roof. It's a rainy day every day. Nah. You're walking around, your bones are all creaking, and you go to boil an egg, and you put it in the water. Then you sit there for 7 minutes. You go just the way I like it. You reach in with your hand, pull the egg out. Yes, scalding hot. Makes me feel once more. The rest of my body is old and gray, and I can feel nothing. Nothing but this burning hot egg in my hand. And then you're peeling it, and then you eat it. And it's runny. You feel like the yellow yolk drip down your ancient face. You're like, the burn. The burn, I didn't expect this level of pleasure. I expected a full, hard-boiled egg. What is it with the world this day? And you continue to kind of walk through your house. You're like, my bones. My bones. And then the camera pulls out of your house, and you see, like, kids playing in the front yard. Everything's nice. There's no hole in your roof. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and you actually see like a family inside your house doing the Macarena. You're a ghost. You're a ghost. You're a 140-year-old ghost slowly rotting away. You're a 140-year-old ghost slowly rotting away. You don't even know you're dead. You just get older and older each day. All you can do is eat eggs. The family's like, okay. Family meeting. Who's eating all of our eggs? Where are all of our eggs going? And the kids are like, I don't know. I don't even like eggs. And the wife's like, I don't know. We're going by like 18. We're going through like 18 eggs every 2 days. Dad's like, guys, listen, eggs, fine, they're okay for stuff, but we can't keep eating. The kids are like, we're not eating them. We're not eating them. And if they turn around, there's huge fight breaks out. Then Dad's like, my toothache. My toothache controls me. And if they had just turned around, they would have seen an egg floating around carried by the decaying spirit of you. If you picked number one, you're an old man ghost, waiting to decay away. But until then, you'll just eat more eggs. deadrabbitradio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at facebook.com/deadrabbitradio. TikTok is at Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one.